Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing another 8th Third of Grade book recommendations list, and this time we're going to be looking at books that are retellings of either myths or classics that are out there. So I have 8 books that I all think are pretty great and we're going to jump straight in today. The first 2 books I'm going to talk about are either Greek or Roman retellings of myths, and the first one of those is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is a retelling of a section of, I believe, the Iliad, but it's basically the Trojan War, and it's specifically told from the point of view of Briseis, who is actually a queen who gets captured from an earlier raid and ends up being sold or given as the slave of Achilles. So she is there when Achilles goes to war, and it's about his relationship with Patroclus and just generally the events that unfold across the Trojan War and leading up to the death of Achilles. It's giving a voice back to sort of the women in this myth, and it's also trying to shine a bit more of a light between the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, and I generally found it a really enjoyable reading experience. I know that there are a couple of very, very big Greek mythology stories out there, like Circe is one that is very, very popular, but I think that this is one that gets a little bit overlooked and is totally worth checking out. There is the odd point where, so the bulk of the point of view is with Briseis, but every once in a while it does jump into Achilles' head because there are certain moments where a woman wouldn't be in that scene, and I found that a little bit jarring and a little bit kind of confusing and not done as well as I would have wanted. But other than that, I really enjoyed the reading experience, and I thought that it was lovely to hear a woman's perspective on the events and to really kind of shine a bit more of a light on some of the atrocities that happened in the war as well. So very good, very interesting, and I listened to it on audiobook and I would totally recommend that. The next one I have to recommend, whoa, I slurred that. The next one I have to recommend in this sort of mini subgenre is Gods Behaving Badly by Marie Phillips. This is a reimagining of the Greek gods, but in modern day, I think Greek. I'm gonna be the first to admit my kind of distinction between Greek and Roman is almost non-existent, so apologies if I've messed up any of these. So basically this is in a modern day context where the Greek gods have started to really lose their power, and they can't really work out exactly why, but basically they've all had to kind of take on day jobs connected to whatever they are the god of. So like Artemis is a dog walker, Aphrodite works a phone sex line. It's all faintly absurd and ridiculous, and there is a rift that happens between Apollo and Aphrodite, I believe, and basically she curses him or gets one of the other people to cast a spell on him, so he falls in love with a mortal, and then it's about the hijinks that ensue from there. I found this so entertaining. I think it's a really fun way of reimagining the gods, and I think that, yeah, it was just a really heartwarming, light, lovely story that not many people have heard of, because I think this was published quite a while ago, and I just wanted to shine a bit more of a spotlight on it, that if you're in the mood for like a fun, silly fantasy style book, this is totally should be up your street. Now we're going to move on to fairy tale retellings, of which I have 2. I'm sure there are more on my shelf, but these are the 2 that immediately jumped to mind. The first is The Mermaid by Christina Henry, although this could probably just be a stand-in for anything that Christina Henry has ever written. I've read 2 of hers, this one and Lost Boy, and she definitely specialises in retelling fairy tales with a bit more of a dark, grim, gothic aspect to them. The Mermaid tells the story of kind of the Little Mermaid, but it is about a young mermaid who falls in love with a gentleman and then basically joins him on the land, and then after her husband has died, she gets found out by P.T. Barnum and then basically invited to come be part of his touring show, because Barnum was really about showing freaks rather than strictly circus as we kind of know it today. And for the record, The Greatest Showman got him horribly wrong. He was a terrible human being, and which you do get to see this in here. But there's also a kind of budding romance relationship with one of his assistants, and it's generally kind of the story from there. I really enjoyed it. I liked the historical accuracy of Barnum and just sort of the way that circus has evolved. It definitely appeals to my background and my history, but I do want to say that Christina Henry is just like a good one to check out in general if you do like fairy tale retellings. I've read Lost Boys, which is like Peter Pan meets Lord of the Flies, which is fantastic, and I really want to check out her Alice series, but also The Girl in Red really appeals at the moment. And then another author that a fair number of people have heard about in the fantasy world, although hasn't been doing anything for a little while, and that is Spindles End by Robin McKinley. Robin McKinley has also got a fair number of fairy tale retellings, although I believe she has a few of her own fantasy series as well, and this is a reimagining of the Sleeping Beauty myth Fairytale, but with a real focus on giving agency back to Sleeping Beauty, and also a real focus on the power of love and friendship between like platonic love and friendship between two women. It's Rosie who is kind of the role of Sleeping Beauty here. She gets taken away from the castle after the curse and ends up living with a couple of fairies, and it's about her growing up and the relationships that she forms, specifically with her and her close friend Posy. It's such a lovely story. I love the magic system in it, and I love the real like quaint life kind of details. Like, it's a very quiet book in some ways. Not much happens until the very end. Don't get me wrong, the end is really cool and very climactic, but I really liked just hanging out with the characters, and I think that they're all so well rounded and really fleshed out. Even like the secondary and to a certain extent the tertiary characters I think are really interesting, and I love Rosie's kind of attitude, and like she's such a strong, her and Posy are both such strong characters but in very different ways, and it's really looking at that idea of what does it mean to be a strong sort of woman character, and how it isn't just about trying to be as manly as you can be. So really, really cool. Again, a book that's been out for ages and is excellent despite how old it is. Okay, we're now drifting into the world of classics retellings, and I have 4 classics retellings for you. From different genres actually, which is quite interesting. The first one is Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Saadawi. This is a reimagining of the Frankenstein story, as the title would suggest, but this time it is putting it in Iraq, I believe, in Baghdad, and it is about a gentleman who rebuilds this monster out of the body parts of various people who have been killed in the bombings that are happening there, because the original idea is basically the government refuses to bury a body unless it's essentially whole and intact, so he tries to build a body in protest, and once he realizes the horrifying thing he's done, he goes to destroy it, but when he comes to destroy it, it's gone. What I really enjoy about this book is not only is the reimagining very, very cool and really interesting look at modern warfare, it's also structurally, it mirrors the kind of epistolary style story within a story within a story that Mary Shelley's original Frankenstein does. So I think in terms of retelling, it is such a clever way of mirroring the original style, and really has kind of a fun nod to the original in that way. So absolutely powerful, very, very cool and interesting, and I definitely recommend reading this kind of swiftly after reading the original to really get those structural parallels. The next one I have to talk about is Jo Nesbo's Macbeth, and this is part of the Hogarth Shakespeare series, and I think it's the only one that I've read from them, but that's where they actively commission authors to do a retelling. Jo Nesbo is kind of a big name in sort of Scandinavian crime noir, and this is a really fun reimagining of Macbeth and Macduff and the whole Macbeth shenanigans, but with a drug task force and kind of a corrupt police force in I think Iceland. Don't quote me on that though, I could be wrong about the country. Retellings are interesting because they quite often are hampered by the plot points of the original, depending on how faithful they want to be, and by putting it in a modern context, it's really highlighting just how absolutely wacky, zany and absurd the original plot of Macbeth actually is. Like the time frame it goes from Macbeth to go from like killing is wrong to like, well, gotta kill everyone now, is about a page and a half, and I'm so here for that. It's really fun. The ending is a bit absurd. It was surprisingly fast-paced given how big it is, and it's just like, if you're a fan of thrillers and sort of that really like high-paced crime, but you want a slightly different take on it, I would totally recommend this. Or indeed, if you're a fan of Shakespeare but you just want to see it put into a modern day setting, this is super fun and entertaining. I love the way that the witches are done. Generally, I'm here for so much what this book is doing. It was a great reading experience. The next one I want to talk about I had in ebook form, so I'm just going to pull up the information on my phone, and that is Ayesha at Last by Uzma Jalaluddin. This is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but it is a contemporary romance, and it is specifically, our two main characters are both Muslim, and it is sort of both playing around with like the different ways that people can express their faith and what faith can mean to them, and also there's all sorts of fun mistaken identity hijinks in there. I really liked this book. I thought it was very light-hearted, very entertaining. It raised some sort of important discussion points without being heavy-handed with them. It was really lovely to jump into somebody else's culture and to sort of see various things that happen there, including discussions around like arranged marriages, which I thought was very interesting from somebody who knows nothing about that world. And just generally, I think it's a really lovely way of doing the retelling. I've not actually read Pride and Prejudice, so I don't know how truthful to the original it is. I don't remember there being mistaken identity in Pride and Prejudice when I've watched any of the movies. But it did add a fun twist, and generally, you know, I had a good time, and I think it really stands up as a contemporary romance in its own right. And now the final book that I have to talk about, again, I read it a really long time ago, and I can't fully remember much about it, but I remember enjoying it, so we're going to put it in this one just in case you want to check it out, and that is Will Self's Dorian. This is a retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray, but is reimagining the story in basically through the AIDS epidemic. And so Dorian is he has like a video taken of him doing ballet, and that is the thing that ages, and he is one of the only ones of his kind of group that doesn't end up catching AIDS. Like I said, I read this comfortably a decade, maybe even 15 years ago now, so my memories of it are very hazy, but I remember thinking that it was very interesting, and I read it shortly after reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I remember really enjoying it. So if you want to check it out, this is my kind of casual endorsement of it, because I really can't remember much more than that. But at some point I'd like to go back and reread The Picture of Dorian Gray and then this one as well, just to kind of refresh that memory. So we're going to end on a slightly wishy-washy review there. But check out a book I read 15 years ago and can't remember anything about. But it has a naked man on the cover. Don't know if that's a good thing or not for you. Selling point. I wonder if this will get demonetized. That would be interesting. None of my videos have yet. Let's see if that happens, because penis. Right, on that note, have you read any of these? Do you have any recommendations for retellings? There are a few more on my shelf I want to get to, and I'm sure I've missed some that I've already read that I could kind of tell you about. So yeah, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, with these 8 that are great, is there a genre that you would be interested in seeing from me? Please do let me know. I've got enough to do: a contemporary romance, a horror, a sci-fi, a fantasy, a 20th century classic, so I haven't done that one already, and a pre-19th century historical fiction, I believe. So if you'd like to see any of those, do let me know in the comments down below. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!